George, now what? So we have Professor Chris today with us. Chris, if I was just being honest and vulnerable, I demanded respect from my wife. And I didn't realize I was demanding respect, but I would say things like, I'm the husband, I'm the man of the household. We kind of learn these things with church. They say stuff like, you should be the spiritual head of your household. They kind of put this pressure and responsibility on you. And so then it's almost like you're demanding that you receive it back from your wife. And not that I purposely tried to demand that my wife would respect me, but I'd say, well, I make more money than you. Well, it's my decision. And, I kind of felt like I needed her respect, but I didn't understand how to communicate that, so I was forceful and hard. And it seemed like our marriage was always at odds with each other, because I was trying to get something for her and she was trying to get something for me. And I felt like almost every decision was a fight, and I had to win the fight. Because if I won the fight, then I got the respect. And, so it was like I would constantly say, well, no this, well, no that, well, no this, because it was like I was trying to maintain my position. And then hopefully she would convert to my position. And then I would achieve my respect, oh, yeah, now she understands that, my thought was the right thought. And because my thought's the right thought, she yielded to that. She submitted, she committed. And now everything's great because she respected me enough to present my thought as king thought in the household. Do you ever run into that?
Well, she just caved in, got tired of arguing with you. That's really what happened.
She's like, this guy's an idiot.
Mr. Joe Glenn Smith, who many of us will probably know or recognize the name, but I've heard him say a lot, if you have to prove you're right, you're wrong. And so I've got that right in the front of my Bible, actually. It's pretty right up there by Genesis. If you have to prove you're right, you're wrong. But a lot of couples that we see, especially the first few sessions, we talk about the 10 needs, relational needs. And most men right off the bat, out of the gate, will recognize that, I need respect more than any of the rest of those. That's what I need. Listen, woman, that's what I need. And almost like you say, they're almost like dogmatic with it. That's why we're here, and
if we can achieve this, our marriage would be great. But we don't know how to communicate it. Like as a man, I don't even know what I need as far as the word respect goes. Like, if you ask me to define it, well, what would I say? That you honor me, that you.
That's another vocabulary word. Honor.
Yeah.
It's lost in culture. We had, and it's been lost in culture for probably our whole generation, and maybe even our parents to an extent. But we saw a young couple last year, 18, 19 years old, high school sweethearts, probably elementary school sweethearts, I don't know. But we were talking about the 10 needs, and we got down to respect. And I just glanced back to the table, and they both had deer in the headlights. And I just stopped, and I said, did I miss something? Did y'all miss something? Did I say something wrong? I never say anything wrong. I said, did you hear something wrong? I'm just kidding. I was seeing who's listening. But we needed to park there a minute. The young man said, I never met my father. And he said, my mother raised me. He said, summers I spent with my grandparents. And at supper every night, my grandmother had supper ready when my granddad would get home. And we would eat dinner together in their kitchen and watch Andy Griffin and Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, one of those three during dinner. We got done with dinner, and my granddad would get up and go in the living room and sit in his recliner, and the kids would go in there and hang out with him while my grandmother would clean up the kitchen. And he said, that's the closest conclusion or definition I have of respect. And so he looked to his fiancée that was premarital counseling, and I said, can you provide this? And she said, no. And she said, we both are working 2 full-time jobs right now, and she was in school. And she's like, that'll never happen, at least for not the next 4 to 6 years. And we both know that. And I said, so if this is your only idea or framework of respect, we got to fix this. And so I went to her and I said, what is your idea of respect? She teared up, and she said, my mom was married either 3 or 4 times to different men while I was in high school. Just in 4 years or 3 years, however long. See, I was on the fast track, so I think, 4 years, 9, 10, 4 years, 3 or 4 different husbands, father figures in the home. that's where culture, unfortunately, a lot of culture is at now. And so it is real. And when we talk about respect, we try to throw out some definitions, both for the man and for the woman. And like most things, usually we may not be able to relate to the actual definition, but we can relate to what not to do. And so when we talk about the need of respect, for the man, it's being admired or admiration. I got a lot of friends that hunt, and I hunt a lot, as much as I can. I love to be in the woods. My girls love to be in the woods. It's just who we are, what we do. And I can bring, maybe a deer in, and my wife will just, that is awesome. She's taking pictures and sending them to friends, and that's the biggest deer I've ever seen. Where did, same thing with my girls. We build them up, because we're proud of them. They spent time in the off season preparing, practicing, shooting, all this stuff, and then it happens. And so there's an admiration there, and there's also an aspect of respect kind of likened to admiration that is being desired. I mean, we all need to be desired, not only from our spouse, but in our occupations and in our friend circles or whatever. Recently kind of took a little new journey and got back into some business. I'd been out for a while, but there was different folks calling me and encouraging me and say, hey, do you want to use some office space or this or that? And it was just good to be desired or sought after. And I really don't have anything to offer other than, me. But just that being desired and being sought after, it's good. And it's good in a marriage to be desired. And that's one thing during the courtship that happens a lot. You're desiring to spend time with the other person and desiring to get to the wedding day, the closing table, whatever. But that desiring aspect's there. For the woman, it's the same too, being admired and being desired, but it's also practical assistance. And in practical assistance, there's days where all of us have crazy days, and we get in, and maybe Stacy went to Walmart that day, and I despise those plastic bags. I think they're like the spawn of hell. I hate them.
My wife, she takes them and she puts them under the cabinet, and we'll have like hundreds of them, and I'll go in there, I'll see a plastic bag, I'll throw the whole thing away, and then she'll be like, what happened to my plastic bags? I'm like, you had 400 bags in there.
I hate them.
Right.
I like the paper bags,
right.
But she'll pull in, and I can see the plastic bags through the car window, and I may open the door and say, why don't you just come on in and sit down? I know you're tired. Let me take care of that. And she'll say, oh, yeah, practical assistance. And she'll sit down. And then she's thinking I'm going to go out there and put all 300 bags on both arms and come in there like, the Incredible Hulk. But then I go and sit down beside her on the couch. And I'm flipping channels, and she's like, hey, man, what about that ice cream out there that's melting into my seat? And I'm like, hey, girls, get the groceries. That's not practical assistance. That's not it. Practical assistance is me meeting her at the door and saying, go sit down, I can handle this. I know where the ice cream goes, not just in my pie hole, but it goes in the freezer. I know where the milk goes. I know where the ketchup. It's just the little things. It's taking the trash out, which I'm not great at, really. I need reminders, even though it's above the counter. But it's the little things, and from what we've learned, that speaks volumes for the woman, is getting that practical assistance. What both men and women do not like for any of that is being challenged on any of it or being questioned. Are you sure that's the way that it needs to be done? Are you sure that's not the way my dad would have done it? That's not the way my mom would have done it. There's days where I may call and say, hey, what's for supper tonight? And Stacy may say enchiladas, and there's nothing, just dead silence. Is my cooking not good enough? Or no, I didn't say your cooking wasn't good enough. Well, it was, crickets in the background. Oh, I was just thinking about cube steak. I'll just scratch all this and we'll start. No, don't do that. But I disrespected really her line of thinking for that day. She'd already had in her mind her plan for the day for dinner. And that's just a little thing, but.
Well, I know that story for myself, that I am being vulnerable and honest here with people and hopes that you'll do the same. My wife was a terrible cooker. And the unfortunate part about it was that she would make me a terrible meal, and I'd be like, this is terrible. I know. I didn't have your counseling back then. Oh, man.
How about Ricky to edit that out?
No, keep it in. I mean, for me, I've made lots of mistakes, and I understand it. Now, should I lie to her or stuff like that? But what I did is I put a demand on her that she needs to have better skills, culinary arts, and if you want to honor and respect me, you'll do a better job presenting this food to me. And she's doing the absolute best that she can. And so I understand that. I didn't respect her at least bringing the best that she could to the table. I disvalued her by saying, that's not the best thing I've ever tasted, So I've had to reanalyze, the value and importance and respect in my wife. And, why would I demote her by saying that? Was it because I felt like I was a better cook? And so I'm like, I'm so much better, trying to get respect from my wife by, I'm better at cooking than you, and so I put her down just so that I can gather respect. And I think that's where the misunderstanding is. Why do we say the bad things that Paul says this, right? I do the things I don't want to do, or, I've seen that in my life consistently where it's not like I want to purposely hurt my wife, but I do.
Yeah. And I mean, you dropped a lot of there's a lot there that you just said, but the vulnerability aspect of it. And our mutual friend, Pastor Mike Wells, we've talked many times about communication and clear communication. And one thing that major that he taught us is if there's a problem that's going on and you already perceive a potential solution, don't bring a problem to the table without a potential solution, even if it's not a good solution. Before you bring that problem, at least have put enough thought process into it before you get to that point. And so, with the questioning and challenging things, what we've learned, and we don't have all this figured out. I'll be the first to tell you. I mean, we don't. We just don't. But there's a lot of times where something is said, and Stacy might say, "Can you please say that a different way?" Or she may say, "You need to say that a different way." With what is it called? It's called the exclamation point at the end. Back up, Jack. Do it again.
Right.
Control, Alt, Delete. Start over. But clear communication. I mean, today you've been gone from Liz all day. You don't know what you're going to walk into when you get home. I've been gone all day. Nobody knows. And so,
but to be able to present to her the respect of, I'm open to listen to what you did go through with the kids, how you felt, sickness, health, bills, feeling, alone. I mean, we don't realize that everything that everybody's going through, how can we connect with them on those things?
On that level.
And still achieve the respect that we're desiring also. It's kind of like that thing where it talks about the splinter in your eye, but the plank in my eye. I'm demanding that you fix your splinter and I've got this big plank. Well, maybe is that so the same way with respect? I'm saying I need respect, but I can't see that they need respect also.
Right. So the thing, like the little illustration with a deer, I got a lot of buddies that hunt too, and they may kill a muy grande. I mean, a monster. Pull up on the tailgate, and instead of their wife coming out snapping pictures, they're like, "Get it out of here! It's bleeding everywhere. It's gonna stink, or I don't want to see it." Maybe they don't want to do that, but that's for me. And that's another example. And I'm not saying right or wrong, but for me, that is a direct hit on. So let's say a spouse, and it is a situation like that. I don't want to see it. I don't want to talk about it. Get out of the way. It don't involve me. I wish you wouldn't do that or whatever. And if that man has went to that woman to try to get that admiration or, compliments or whatever, and they don't get it, where they're going to go. And it might be at the water fountain or one of their buddies later that day at work or whatever, and say, "I can't believe my wife did this." And then now there's two problems. Now there's two concerns. Lack of respect, and then over here, now that man's uncovering his wife in front of somebody else. And putting that out there in a situation, putting his wife down in front of somebody else. And at Pastor Jimmy many, many years ago used that illustration that if something's going on and you can't settle it, you get some counsel that you can and trust. And it's not just put out there to belittle somebody else that may or may not even know your wife. or the situation, because it opens the door for more concerns or more issues.
And what is the guy doing when he takes it to the water cooler? He's looking for somebody to say
for
respect.
Validation.
Right,
yeah. He's looking for the same thing that he started out with his helpmate.
Right.
And we call them needs questionnaires. After session 1, we send, and we've got them. If anybody wants one, call us. We'll be glad to send you some. But it's really just an algorithm. There's a bunch of questions you answer 1 to 5, and it is amazing at the number of couples that come back, and we always kind of expect that that's going to be the high need for the man. But it's amazing how many come back and it's the high need for the woman. And they're like, we didn't even expect this, but my number one need is really respect. It was due to affirmation or just being desired, or, the little things, or whatever the case may be. But a real high percentage of women come back, because support is wrapped up in that respect for a woman, practical assistance and support. And so, that's really what we see it a lot.
Well, I think one of the easiest ways to achieve giving respect to somebody is valuing. I didn't analyze my wife's time to go to the grocery store, her looking up the recipe, her, taking the time to do the cooking, the measuring and the cleaning and, preparing of the food, which is all an effort in actual respect to me. But I didn't receive all of those acts that she did for me. I just looked at the end result, very small portion of everything she did and spent time, and said, "Oh, that's not the highest quality steak I've ever tasted," or "Oh, those are dry mashed potatoes," and I think once I changed my thought of the process of how it takes to do things and started to value her, considering her time and what she does and how she does things, helped me to appreciate, hey man, you do this awesome. I love these, and being open also. So, one of the things we're just talking about cooking is that she would make cookies and she would say, what do you think of these cookies? Well, I've learned a little bit from the first meal I had.
Right. Say it. You want to say it. We're getting beat down.
We're beat down. And so, she says, what do you think of these cookies? Now, in my, what I've had to do is help communicate, say, well, are you trying new recipes? Are you, is this mama's recipe that is at your core the best recipe because you ate these cookies for 20 years? Or is this Nestle's out of the refrigerator? Can we put more flour in it? Can we put more sugar in it? Can we make them bigger? Can we make them flatter? How can we get them juicier? How can we get them crispier? Like, are we open conversation of dialect, of talking about it? Or are you asking me personally in your heart because you want some affirmation of respect?
That's good.
And so I kind of try to analyze our conversations now. And I do this with my wife, and wives, don't hate me. I'm embarrassed to say it myself.
Something big's coming. Here it comes.
It's coming. I'm throwing it out on the
brace
table.
For impact.
Oh my gosh, why do I do this? So in my process of doing this, and this is not a lesson I learned from Chris, but I'll say, are you fishing? Are you fishing for a compliment? Are you fishing for, something? Basically, are you in need of me to stop what I'm doing, open my heart? Are you fishing? And that's not the best way to start a conversation, I know. But then it helps her at a moment to say, maybe a little, yeah, it would be nice.
Yeah.
And I thought that's kind of I'm appreciative of that because I'm kind of dense and dumb, I'm kind of like that deer that you shot. Sometimes I don't get how she does need that respect and when she needs it. And so am I understanding her comments and things that she is fishing for that without being so bold? So like for us, I'm like, bring me the water, dang it. What am I asking for? I'm asking for respect. I'm not really asking for water. I'm like, will you serve me? And that doesn't happen in my house at all. But just as an example of what could happen. Keep it, Ricky. So, but how many times do we do that? Like we put a demand on somebody, not under the title of, do you respect me? But it's like we fish as men, At work, hey, do this. Do they listen? I was talking to a guy the other day and he says, man, I went in, I talked to the employees and I was telling them to do this, I was telling them to do that. And he goes, and I came back and it wasn't done. And he felt violated about his respect, and I know I've kind of done that before with my wife. Again, I'm throwing myself under the bus. I give her money and I said, did you pay for the bills? And then did you pay for the bills? And then did you pay for the bills? And one time we went out of town to Disney and the water got shut off. And I said, did you pay for the bills? And it was such an insult to her because she did, but then she had to think, well, did I? But what happened is one of the water mains got busted. And so I insulted her and didn't respect her by saying, oh, you always pay the bills late or stuff like that, which really is my fault because I'm the only breadwinner in the house. So if the bills are late, it's really on me, but then I blame it on her. And like I have this problem. I'll be responsible here. I have this problem of sometimes of instead of communicating in a form of respect, I blame, which then gives her no respect. Opens the door. So I'm terrible at this. So I need this conversation. We're having this conversation because we haven't achieved the greatness of, giving respect, but more so that we see what's not working and analyzing what would be a better way to work.
Hey, we're working on it too. I mean, like I said, we do not have all this figured out. We're all learning together, and I do know that when we do get derailed and things do come off the track from either being challenged or questioned or second guessed or whatever, or lack of support, any of it, and we're trying to get back to track. And we both recognize it. And the amount of time that goes by it sucks because it's just downtime. It's, and that's what the devil wants, a still target. If you're not moving anywhere, it's a still target. Over and over and over Scripture, Jesus said, go, move, be on the move. And so, when we do get back to, let's get it back on track, I'll say, I'll try to do better. That's what I'll say. And Stacey will say, no, you won't. And she'll say,
liar.
She'll say, just do better. Because she, and now I've heard it so many times because I derail. It just happens. We derail as people.
Right.
And I know she don't want me to say, I'll try to do better. So it's almost comical now because I'll say, I'll try to do better. And she'll laugh, So we're almost back to the correction line, and I'll throw that in there because I have the gift of sarcasm. And that's not really a gift, but it is to me, and that's important. But
keeps the peace.
The what?
Keeps the peace in you.
But it really, when we get to that point, I know that we're coming over the mountain. We're there. I'll say, I'll try to do better. And she'll say, no, you won't. She said, just do better. That's it. Just do better. That's all I'm asking. Just do better. Don't try nothing. Just do it. And so there we go. And then we're back on course, whether, until the next bump or.
Well, I, in my 15 years, hasn't been that long, but I've noticed, last week we talked about kind of, having a vision and applying that vision and then analyzing the results based on, what you said you wanted to accomplish. And so we talked about basketball season, and the same thing kind of happens. And in basketball season, I can't find my underwear. I can't, I'm short on clothes, I'm short on groceries and stuff like that. And so instead of saying, woman, get to work, I need to, how can I do the laundry?
Practical assistance.
How can I help her assist? Because what I've noticed is she notices that she's behind. And so because she already knows, and this is how dumb I was. I was like, when we first got married, I was like, obviously you don't notice that the dishes need to be done. Obviously you don't notice how dirty this house is. Obviously you don't have the respect for me to do the cleaning like you should. So let me tell you what you should do, woman.
Wow.
I was a great lover, but I was a terrible husband. Yeah. So then here's the deal. Now that I've recognized that, I recognize that she recognizes, and I think that was kind of the disrespect in the beginning was my demand. I didn't realize she already recognized And she felt bad about it. I remember one night she was like, I know how bad I am at these things. And then that's when I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm such a jerk, because what faults do you have? I mean, obviously, if I said, man, what faults do you have? You know all of your faults. I know all of my faults. Everybody listening right now knows, all of their faults. But we don't bring it up in conversation to each other as vulnerable. This is my fault and I'm sorry. This is my fault and this is what I'm working on. So again, I brought out her fault. She already knew them. So now we're in basketball season and I know her fault. She knows her faults. How can I fulfill those faults so that she doesn't feel like she's behind and she feels like I'm supporting her in this? It benefits us nothing that she's coaching basketball. There's no financial gain in it or anything like that. For her, it's the accomplishment of teaching the kids. She came to me the other day. She says, hey, I need some money for the kids, so I'm going to buy them some treats. And she says, I offered them a prize. If they set some picks during the game, they get this cookie. And so she says they lost the game, but all the girls were concerned about this cookie. They're like, did we do enough picks for the cookie? And she's like, absolutely, of course. And just to see her come alive and connect with these young girls and stuff like that, it brings great joy to our marriage because she's accomplishing the things she wants to, which is another thing of respect. I'm letting her do those things, and I'm giving her the respect of helping her through the assistance of managing the house and the kids and the different things like that so that she can achieve these things. Now, what I don't do is say, hey, I did the dishes today to show you the respect. And I think sometimes as a man, we forget that, our kids need respect. We think, oh, well, I'm going to give my boss the respect because I'm going to do the work. But our wives need it. Our kids need it. Everybody around us really needs respect.
It is. It's true. And men and women see things so differently. I mean, illustration of fire, I can imagine back, however, when they were cavemen, were making fire, and the man probably took all day and who knows, maybe weeks trying to figure out the right flint or right angle. And I made fire, I made fire. He's probably going to his neighbors and, the UPS store or Walmart. I made fire, and he's proud of the fire. He's just proud of the fire. And then the woman sees it. She's like, wow, and she just shot him down, but he made fire. And, the woman may not appreciate the fire, but she may appreciate a nice chair with maybe a drink or coffee or whatever with her feet up by the fire and looking at the stars or whatever. Well, the man's not thinking about the coffee and the wine and the stars. He's thinking about, I made fire. And his accomplishment. And we're just wired so differently. Now, the common ground, the man and the woman are both going to enjoy the fire, but for different reasons. And to be able to articulate that, clear communication, and, it's just process. Time of development with many changes. You got to work towards it, work on it. If you're not working on it, you're working against it. And
so, as a man, we're both men. We shouldn't be talking about what women should do because I do that enough, and my wife yells at me. As a man, how should we do this to accomplish respect for our wives? I mean, what are kind of some of the guidelines and things that you?
It's different for everybody. For us, on days where we've got a lot going on, I may just see it and say, hey, I've got supper covered. Or see it and, there's days I walk in, and Stacy's like, we got to get out of the house. And I'm like, well, we can just do this, this, and this. If we'll just do the laundry first or clear the sink. No. I need to get out of the house, That's like the Mr. Rogers moment. You just change vest and shoes and back out the door, And so listening, we talk about effective speaking or dialogue, clear communication, but it's twofold. It's not just being able to get your thought out there clearly, but it's being able to receive the other person's thought without, you're telling me what I need or what you need. I don't need to be thinking about how to respond. I need to be trying to figure out how to do what you're needing. And when you quit talking and you say, now what do you think? Now I can figure out so just listening.
Yeah, but most of the problem is I didn't know. What I wanted was respect. What I wanted is honor, but I didn't know what I really wanted my wife to do to present that respect and honor to me. And it could always look different. Like I said, it could be, yes, she brought me a glass of water while I was on the lawnmower. Yes, she accomplishes all these goals and tasks. But also just to achieve that respect and honor without demoting the other person. I know my wife's consistent thing was I never feel like I'm enough. If my respect and honor always made her do work and effort to serve, is that really what I want out of respect and honor?
Probably not. Did you say, I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want? Did you say that?
No, I didn't. But what's the next verse?
I don't know. That's all I know. This morning, today's a crazy day for us. We got a lot of stuff on the front burner this week. And when me and Stacy separated from each other this morning, she said, "Do you need me to do anything?" It's the last thing I love you. Do you need me to do anything? Yes, I do. That way works a lot better than me starting leaving and saying, I need you to do this, this, and this. No, she knew that we got a full plate, and she put out there, what do you need me to do today? And I was already thinking and hoping she was going to say, what can I help you do today? Practical assistance. I need that too. And so I said, can you please help me with this, this, and this? And she said, okay, when do you need it by? So she went one step further. We talked about time last week. I said, I won't need it till 3 p.m. She said, perfect. I left, she left, or we departed or whatever. And within an hour, and it was just some names and stuff. It wasn't I didn't need the Declaration of Independence redrafted. I just needed about some names. And so she texted me the names. And so that was what I needed right then. When I leave here, I may need something else. Hopefully she'll ask again. But in like manner, like token, I need to be asking her, and I will before I leave town. I'm going to pass by Publix and Walmart, the post office, whatever. Do you need me to pick anything up? She may say, yes, I need you this, this, and this. It just works better. How can I help you? And sometimes when we get derailed, that part's gone. That dialogue's gone. It's not. And then my conversation goes, well, if you would have just asked, if you would have just told me you was going to Publix, I'd have told you I've been out of deodorant. Or why didn't you ask? And then we're off on the hunt's on. Then we're derailed, and it just.
Well, and I think that's where the responsibility comes in on our part to share. If we're demanding respect or honor, and we're not presenting, our wives aren't mind readers, we're not mind readers. It is that open communication and making ourselves available to that communication. Oh, can you on your way get some milk?
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't planning on it, but I will make that extra effort, so that she doesn't, who has 4 kids at home, has to pack up the kids, go to the store to get the milk, which is a lot more effort. Can I yield a little bit of my time versus her having to yield a lot of effort to go get some milk?
But that mind reader thing is huge, and it took us a long time to figure that out. None of us are mind readers. And sometimes, even though we know that, and we start to get derailed, it goes, something defaults. Well, you should have known that. Or why didn't you know that? Or why didn't you know what I was thinking? Or if things are already in turmoil or distress, you're no longer in sane thinking. You're in fight or flight. So you're not making good decisions.
Right.
And then you start saying things or doing things. And I love what David Brown says. He says, if I'm doing something to hurt you, I'm hurting us. So if I really cared about me, I'm not going to hurt you.
Right.
And so you get off on this path, and then you're basically self-inflicting. And it's a crazy cycle. Once you get in, it's hard to get off the cycle unless a divine intervention from the Lord through conviction, or you trusted counsel goes, quit being a butthead, man. Get your head out of And it's usually one of those two things. Either the Lord so reveals it to you that you cannot walk away from it, or somebody that you know and trust out of the blue calls and says, stop, or whatever. It's usually one of those two. I'll tell you what it's not. It's not coming home and there being a little book on top of the toilet that says what every man needs to do for his wife. That is not divine intervention of any sort. Right. And it's not even good for toilet paper.
So you've had people use books for toilet paper?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. When we were, at the beginning of our end or into the beginning. I don't know how that works up in the big scheme of things, but for days and weeks, I may have a different book on top of the toilet seat, or where I brush my teeth, or in my truck, or a daily devotional with a fish on the front. None of that stuff. Now, Stacy is doing the best she could. I was in the wrong. We were both in the wrong, but I was really in the wrong. God said to the man, work and keep. I wasn't working and keeping at all. And, the good thing about those books is years later that I sometimes give them out for gifts now. So I have used some of them, but they're great re-gifts. And I'm not downplaying that. We do need to be study to show thyself approved. And we do need to be studying people that have walked a little bit further down the road than we have.
But I think that's the thing you're saying is, are we even showing respect by putting the demand on somebody, the other spouse, read this book, instead of maybe how can we communicate it better? We're demanding, go learn how to cook, go do a better job, and that friction does not add respect. I think that's kind of the thing when you're saying, a book on marriage is not going to give that person respect. It's going to make a greater divide. For me, one of the things was grace. Once I started learning about grace and I gave myself grace, I was actually able to give my wife grace. I'm really hard on myself of how much money we make, what are we doing, why are we failing? And so, because I was so hard on myself, if business was not good, I'm like, well, I'm failing at all these things, and now here's all the things you're failing at. If you'd get your things better, I could get my things better, And so I think that kind of goes on. But when I was able to mutually respect and give my wife the respect and honor that she deserves, and I'm not 100% there, but it was when I had the grace and compassion that she is a valuable person. I had the grace to say, man, I like to take a nap. Man, I like to not go to the store, when I've got all 4 kids here. Can I get somebody else to do that for me? And then once I understood that I like downtime, I like quiet time, I like these things.
Yeah.
Obviously,
and
it's okay. But obviously I should help her provide that quiet time, help her provide that she doesn't feel the anxiousness of having to take 4 kids to the grocery store. How could I help her feel good about the good things that I feel about?
That's good. Pastor L.A., I got this written, my front of my Bible, I got all kind of quotes, but he said, you can't give away something you don't have. And so that's when you were saying that, I can see that written in my Bible, that you can't give away something you don't have. And the fake it till you make it, I don't have that in the front of my Bible. I got, if you want to give something away, you got to have it first. And that's that grace flow, flowing in, flowing out.
So you almost have to have grace for yourself. And maybe that might be I know one time I was at this business meeting and the guy was kind of talking about who wants to be a millionaire. And we're all like, yeah, millionaire. And he says, why? I'm like, huh. And then he kept asking that question, why? And most of the times it came down to, so people would accept me. My family would love me. My dad would be proud of me. I'd feel accomplished. And I don't think women realize as men, we have this grief inside of us to be great. And we don't know why. But your man wants to be great. He wants to be successful, and it's for you. And women want to be great, and it's successful for their husband and family also. And if we could just kind of see that both of us are trying to perform under this desire to be great, and that's where the frustration comes out of, I want to be great, and I see that you're not being great in this area of mowing the lawn or keeping the house or cleaning, but I know you want to be great. And that's where grace comes in. I know you want to be great and I want to be great. And I know I fail and I know you fail. And what do we need to do to help each other be great at everything we do in our relationship, in our marriage? I think that's when you'll be able to achieve, once you can kind of look inside and say, what is the fight that's going on in me? that I don't understand makes me angry and demand respect.
Yeah, that's good. And it's not just for our spouse. It starts there, but, our friends, our workplace, the circle just goes out. And usually if one area is skewed, one of those avenues is skewed, the ripple effect, it affects a lot. Could affect everything. So I was thinking, true story, this past weekend, Saturday, with a grace aspect of respect. We had our family's really involved with 4-H and has been for years. We love the program. We love the kids. It's extended family. It's just good. And Saturday morning there was a couple come up about 8:30, an older couple, and been friends with them for years. I usually see them 2 or 3 times a year at events or sometimes at holidays. Bump into them shopping, that sort of thing. They're from Florida. They were up for the event Saturday, and they come up and they just straight out of the gate, they started asking about the law. They were like, are we under law? And, can we do this and that? And, we've got other folks that are telling us that, the law takes precedence. And I just had to stand back and I was like, it's about, we're under the new covenant, and it's compassion and grace and doing the next right thing when the wrong thing happens, and acts of kindness, and all these things that Jesus did, finding needs and meet them. And, I don't know who's watching or listening, and you can be on either side of that fence. Not the point right now. But they just had a lot of questions. They had a lot of unsettledness. And I tried to show them a few passages, and I was like, you know what? We're not going to be able to solve. We're not going to be able to finish this conversation in the next 15 minutes. So let's just get together in the days or weeks to come, and we'll cross that bridge. And we parted. That's okay. We'll talk later or whatever. So at the end of the day, throughout the day, there's little games and prizes that the kids and adults can pay to play, and then earn tickets, and then all the tickets go into a big bucket. And at the end of the day, we've got sponsors that donate gifts throughout the season, some small, some big, but notably one prize was a brand new bow, about a $500, $600 bow, really nice bow. It was on the prize table. So in order to win it, you had to have the ticket that was drawn to go up there and win. In order to have a ticket, you had to pay to play. So I'm going to hit pause right there. And so we've got a young man that he's been in the program for 2 years. It's in archery, and super good kid. I mean, good kid. And almost every practice he says, one day I'm going to get me a new bow. And he's shooting a bow that it's called a club bow. It's been passed down. We have to work on it almost every week. Does it work? Yes. Do we all have to work on it? Yes. Is it okay? Yes. He makes the best with what he's got, and he loves it. But every week he's like, when we're working on it, he's like, one day I'm going to get me a new bow. And so he was obviously in the crowd. His dad was in the crowd, and along with people from all over Georgia and all over, really folks from Florida was there too. And so we got through with the awards, and it was prize time. And so that young man was sitting up against the wall over here, and they called the first ticket, and a young man from behind me jumped up and went down to the table, and everybody's mind, they're going to grab the bows. The most there was some Yeti coolers and stuff. You can go for the bow. It's the biggest ticket item. Any of us would have. And so he grabs the bow, and without any reservation or hesitation, goes over to the kid against the wall, puts it in his hand, and goes back to his seat. And the crowd went crazy. Tears, everybody cried. It was amazing. It was the most amazing thing we've ever witnessed as part of any program, especially. I mean, anything we've been through like that. And I mean, it just completely, the environment just changed. These kids are not in the same shooting class. They're not in school together. They know each other's names. It is just awesome. And so after the awards were over, I went to the kid that had gave the prize, and I said, "Did this just hit you?" And he said, just as straight faced, he said, I had a plan and I stuck to it and it worked. And I said, well, what was your plan? He said, I spent over $70 in tickets today trying to get more tickets to increase my odds. And he said, this is what I've been wanting to do all day. And I was like, man, that is awesome. And so I went to the kid that received the bow. And I was like, what was your thoughts on this whole thing? And he said, when they called that first and he had played games that day too. He was trying to, everybody knew how the game was going to work. And he said, when they drew that first ticket and it wasn't mine, he thought, I'm done. I'm not going to get a new bow today. He said, my heart sank and I was a little disappointed. And he said, but then when he brought me that bow, he said, I just don't even know what to say. I don't have words. I don't, and he just kept, I don't know what to say. I don't know. This is coming from a kid that on the back of his jersey, we call him Chatterbait because he's a talker. Great kid. He was just speechless. And it was just the perfect demonstration through material things of grace and it was just amazing. It was just the biggest act of compassion. And so the next morning I phoned that couple and I was like, you remember that thing we were talking about yesterday morning? Kind of law versus compassion. And I was like, what you saw, what we all saw last night, and what we all felt, and it changed everything in the room, the mood, everything. I was like, that's what we're supposed to be after. I was like, and it was done by, we saw it all. And the icing on the cake, and what made it so amazing, is that it was that couple's grandson that gave the bow. So the very conversation that we tried to put words to and couldn't about law and just tough things that we couldn't, in full demonstration, in actions, 14 hours later we saw it. And I was reminded back, they were trying to trick Jesus, and they said, what's the greatest of the commandments? They were trying to trick him. It was the attorneys, and they were trying to get him to single out one and say, this is more important than the other. This one's more important. Or, no, you got to do this one. And Jesus didn't. He just said, love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And that is what we saw. It was, I was all hyped up. I'm still hyped up about it. I ain't seen the kid yet. Everybody was hugging and high-fiving and fist bumps. That was compassion. That was respect. It was awesome.
Well, and to take it into the conversation of marriage, how many of us know what our spouse wants to achieve but feels like they can never achieve it? Maybe it's out of reach. Maybe the possibility is not there in their own might. But what could you do to help them achieve that? What could you do to help? I don't think it's, sometimes I think from behavior groups, we say, oh, that's a lofty dream for you to feel like you can achieve that, and like some spouses, it's one's more analytical and one's more inspirational, and so if the analytical one says, yeah, he's just always head in the clouds. I think the respect and honor is what if we even just said, I believe in you? What if we just told our spouses, man, you're enough. You did enough. How can I help you, And that's what we get from other people. When we can yield ourselves and give the greatest gift on the table.
Yeah.
To accomplish what
possible.
You wanted.
It's possible.
Right.
It don't have to be the first pick prize bow. It can be the little things. It can be the big things, but a movie came out years ago, Pay It Forward. Doggone great movie. And in the movie, it was a movement. It was based off of a movement. That same thing a few years ago, there's a movement, whatever, come out, free hugs. I bought the T-shirt, all it takes is one. All it takes is a little fire. I got fire,
Fire.
Look at what I got and go, and that's what we got fire, ever since Acts, the availability of it anyways. So,
and we should flame that fire within each other.
Yeah.
And that brings respect and honor.
Yep. It's good stuff.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Closing thoughts.
Do better. Don't try. Just do it. Just do better. From the great theologian Stacy. Just do better.
Until next time.
See you guys.